All right, we're going to get started. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the NEA Big Read Swimming with Sharks meetup. My name is Chelsea, and I'm a museum educator at the Florida Museum, and I'm so excited to introduce you to the first of our children's book meetups in partnership with the Alachua County Library District. You'll notice that as a participant, you are muted with your cameras turned off. This is because we're using a Zoom webinar. The chat option will remain open throughout the event, so please use it respectfully. If you have a question for our scientists or authors, please submit it through the Zoom chat, but be sure to address it to all panelists and hosts so that everyone can see your question. We'll also be popping up a poll throughout the event, so make sure you're answering those questions too. So this program and the ones I'm about to tell you about are all supported by the National Endowment of the Arts Big Read Grant. So this has allowed us to offer a series of free events that build community in Alachua County by uplifting the stories of women in science. You can learn about our other events in the series by following the links in the chat. The next book in the Children's Book Meetup series is Evelyn the Adventurous Entomologist. I always skip over that one. She's very adventurous, we can't forget, on January 30th. And then the next one after that will be the Finding Wonders Children's Book Meetup on March 27th. We'll also be hosting two exciting programs in February, including Girls Do Science on the 13th of February, an event created around doing science activities and connecting with real scientists. And on the 19th, we'll be hosting a keynote presentation by science communicator and YouTube star of the show Brain Scoop, Emily Grassley. You may also know her as the chief curiosity correspondent at the Field Museum or the host of the Prehistoric Road Trip show on PBS. So back to today, you'll be meeting author Heather Lang, who wrote the book Swimming with Sharks, and two marine biologists, Lindsay and Shannon. When they're all finished telling you about the cool stuff about sharks, I'm going to come back on and read the questions that you have written into the chat so that they can answer them. At the end of the program, a survey will appear, and this will be for all of the participants and their grown-ups to tell us what they thought about our time together this morning. So please take a few moments to help us out. So now that we're all caught up and hopefully everyone has joined us that was planning to, I'm going to kick it over to Lizelle, who is helping us from the Alachua County Library District. Lizelle, do you want to pop on?
Hi, guys. So my name is Lizelle, and I'm a children's librarian with the Alachua County Library District. I'm at the Tower Road branch, and I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. We have some special guests that we're going to share with you, but first we wanted to ask a couple of questions about you guys reading the book. So you should see a poll pop up on your screen, and if you can go ahead and give us your answers for that. It's about if you read the book Swimming with Sharks and how you liked it, and if you learned anything new. And we will take a look at those poll results in just a little while. But I also wanted to share with you a few things about the book. So for those of you who may not have read the book yet, it's Swimming with Sharks, The Daring Discoveries of Eugenie Clark. Ooh, and look at those results. I'm so glad you guys learned a lot and loved the book. So this book is about, it's a narrative biography about a famed ichthyologist, which means a marine biologist who studies fish. And her name was Dr. Eugenie Clark. On your screen right now, you can see lots of pictures, and these are pictures of the real life Eugenie Clark and some of the research she did and some of the studying she did with sharks. In the book, we saw from how from a young age, Eugenie was fascinated with fishes and sharks she saw at aquarium, and that inspired her to pursue a career in marine biology, even though at the time, in the 30s, not many women were actually working in the field. And even though she faced discrimination because of her gender, but also because she was Japanese American. But actually throughout her career, Eugenie did a lot of critical research. She authored some books, and she even founded the Mote Marine Laboratory, which is right here in Florida. And so that's everything that you learn about in the beautiful picture book, Swimming with Sharks. So before I introduce you to our special guest, I thought you might like to see some real life pictures of the sharks that get mentioned in the book, Swimming with Sharks. So we'll go through and you can see different pictures, and I have a little fact about each shark. So the first one is the hammerhead shark. There's actually a variety of species of sharks that are referred to as hammerhead, and they've all got that flat shape on the top of their heads. They range in size from really small at 35 inches to really big at up to 20 feet. Next is the black tip shark. As you can see, it's named for those black tips on its fins and on the dorsal fin. Next are the dogfish sharks, which this is actually another order of sharks that is quite large, and it's made up of lots of sharks. And this one in particular is a spiny dogfish. The next one is our lemon shark. They have a yellowy skin color, which is where they get their name, the lemon shark, and that's to provide camouflage against the sand, because these sharks usually swim low against the sand. Next up is our nurse shark. If you take a look at the face of the nurse shark, it's got barbels or cirri, which are those little whisker-like appendages, and that helps it find its food. Number 9 is the bull shark. So it has the ability, one of the unique things about bull sharks is that they can really easily move from salt water into fresh water and back and forth. And it's because of that that most human encounters with sharks are with bull sharks, because they can be in different kinds of waters. Next up is the tiger shark. You'll notice that it's named for the stripy patterns on its side that it has. It kind of looks like a tiger. And the tiger shark is the 4th largest shark and the 2nd largest predatory shark. They can reach lengths of 18 feet and up to 2,000 pounds. So now we're going to move on to the gray reef shark, also known as the black tail reef shark. It sometimes gets confused with the black tip shark, but as you can see, it only has the black coloring on its tail fins. Next up is the Japanese swell shark. It's also known as the blotchy swell shark. And like other members of its genus, which I will try to say is Cephalocilium, but that might not be pronounced correctly, the Japanese swell shark can inflate its abdomen with water or air in an effort to look more scary and deter potential predators. And finally, we have my personal favorite is the whale shark. Whale sharks are the largest fish in the sea. They're filter feeders, which means they basically just open their mouths wide, gulp in water, and as they swim, they filter the food from the water. So those are all the different kind of sharks that were named in Swimming with Sharks. And now that we've had our fill of those awesome real life sharks, I'm so pleased to introduce our special guest, Miss Heather Lang. In addition to being the author of our very own big read book, Swimming with Sharks, Miss Lang is the author of 5 other books, all about inspiring real life women. So let's all give a nice welcome to Miss Heather Lang.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to talk to you all.
All right, so having Miss Lang here is the perfect opportunity for us to ask her some questions about swimming with sharks. I'm going to start with some questions I have ready, but if you have a question, make sure you or your grown-up type it in the chat box and we'll get it answered at the end of the program. All right, so question number one for Miss Lang. Swimming with Sharks is a narrative nonfiction book, which for our audience means that it's a story, but it's about someone real and has real life events in it. Is there something that drew you to writing this genre instead of other fiction or traditional nonfiction books?
Yes, well, writing true stories about brave women from history like Eugenie Clark inspires me every day to dream big and to push myself and be brave and to never give up. And so I feel really lucky that I consider these women my role models. And researching and writing picture book biographies also helps me grow in so many important ways. It helps me learn how people in the past made things better for us today. And the women I write about have taught me about failure, and that failure is not a bad thing. In fact, you pretty much have to fail if you want to succeed at something. It's really just a step in your journey. So I think that's a really important thing that I learn as I'm working on these books. And also writing about true stories about women has connected me to our natural world. It's helped me overcome fears. It's helped me discover new passions. And I think most importantly, it gives me the chance to share these amazing women with young readers like you, and hopefully inspire you to be brave and pursue your own dreams.
What a great answer. Yeah, I always think that reading about real people is super inspiring. It helps us see what we can do. So next up, is there a particular reason you decided to write a book about Eugenie Clark? Did something inspire you to pick her instead of some other awesome female scientist?
Yes, definitely. When I was about 9 years old, I saw a really scary movie called Jaws. And I was terrified after that to really go in the ocean unless I could see my feet on the bottom. I thought sharks were swimming around in the ocean looking for people like me to eat. And so I had this deep fear that followed me into my adulthood. And I thought it could be really interesting to write a book about a personal fear, to research it and write it. And maybe in the process, I could overcome my fears. So that's how I came up with the idea to write about the shark lady, Eugenie Clark, and write this book.
Great, yeah. Next up, just like being a scientist, there's a lot of research that goes into writing the kind of narrative nonfiction books that you write. How long do you usually spend researching a person before you feel like you're ready to write the book about them? And what kind of things did you research for this book specifically?
Well, every book is really different. Writing nonfiction it's kind of like a giant puzzle with all these different pieces, and so sometimes the pieces come together pretty nicely when I'm doing my research, but sometimes there's a piece missing, and I have to go looking for that piece of information. And sometimes I don't find it, and I have to, reformat the way I'm thinking about restructure the book. And so it can take a long time because I can't make stuff up, right? These are true stories and I don't make anything up. So for most books, I'd say it takes about at least 6 months. But I love the research. It's one of the things I love about writing these books. It's so much fun. It's like a big treasure hunt to me. And then what kind of research did I do for this book? I did a lot of different kinds of things. The first thing I did was I went to the library and I read a lot of books about sharks. And I also found a few books about Eugenie Clark. And I have one of them here that I want to show you if you haven't read this book. This is a book, it's an autobiography. It's a book written by Eugenie Clark about her life. So that was really helpful to me. Because I could read in her own words about her adventures and all the obstacles she faced. So take a look at this book, The Lady and the Sharks, if you haven't looked at it yet. And then I also read lots of her scientific publications. She's done, as you know, tons of research about fish and sharks. And so I read, she's written, hundreds of scientific publications. So I looked at a lot of those, not all of them, but a lot of them. And I also collected photographs and looked at photographs, which are really helpful to me, but they're especially helpful to the illustrator. Jordi Solano was the illustrator in this book. And while I'm sure he did his own research, he couldn't do the amount of research that I did. So I always collect photos for my illustrators and share them with them. And then they use those photos to inspire the art in the book. And I can show you an example of that. Here is a photo of Eugenie Clark right here measuring a shark. And then if you look over here, you can see the illustration that Jordi came up with, inspired by that photo. And there's other examples in the book as well. He used the photos a lot to inspire his artwork. The other thing I do is I always try to experience what I'm writing about. And in the case of this book, I knew I needed to experience Jeannie's underwater world, which I had never done because I was afraid of sharks for all those years. And so I got certified to go scuba diving. And at that time, by the time I did this, I was no longer afraid of sharks because I had done my research and I had learned very quickly that humans are not on the shark menu and sharks aren't interested in eating people. And so I was really excited. And when I jumped in that day, I wanted really badly to see a shark. I didn't see one that day, but I have seen sharks on other occasions. And now I love seeing sharks underwater. It's so cool, so much fun. And then finally, probably one of the most important things I do is I talk to experts. And so experts are people who know a lot about a subject. And the expert on Eugenie Clark and sharks is obviously Eugenie Clark. So I went down and visited her at the Mote Marine Laboratory and spent a lot of time with her. And I have a picture, which I want to share with you from that. I took my daughters with me. You can see them because by then they could not wait. They'd heard so much about Eugenie Clark, they could not wait to see her. And so this is a picture of us in her office. And as you can see, there's so much cool stuff in her office. Her office was like a little museum in itself. And I especially liked her shark jaw collection, which I don't know if you can see on the top shelf there. That was really cool. So yeah, so those are the things, most of the things I did to research the book.
Okay, and so you hit on this a little bit in your last question, but what was it like actually getting to meet Eugenie Clark and what did you learn from her?
Oh, well, meeting Jeannie in person was incredible. At the age of 91, she was just as passionate as ever about sharks. And she kept talking about this upcoming research trip she had, and she hoped she would get in the water and be able to go scuba diving. And so I think that meeting with her really helped me figure out what themes I wanted to include in the book. I knew I wanted to center the book around her passion for sharks and her intense curiosity. She was such a curious person. So it really, once I left there, I kind of knew where I was going with the book. And what did I learn from her? I learned so much from her. I think first and foremost, I learned she was a person who never judged sharks based on rumors or the way they looked. And it was a good reminder for me not to judge, right? She was a pure scientist. She was always open-minded. And I think that is a great example for everyone. And another thing I learned from her is how important it is to set goals. She, as a very young girl, set the goal that she wanted to see sharks in the ocean and she wanted to become a fish scientist. And I'll show you a picture from the book where she did see her first shark. This is the illustration in the book where she saw her first shark. And once she achieved that goal, of course, she set more goals. And that's something important that I learned from her, is you have to keep setting goals for yourself. And so one of the goals she set for herself was, she wondered, can sharks be trained? Are they smart? Can they be trained? And so she went about investigating that. And here's an illustration from the book where she discovered, indeed, sharks are smart, they're clever, and they can be trained. And then, of course, she went on to, she realized that sharks are in serious trouble. And so she set the goal to teach the world and share with the world and prove to the world that sharks are magnificent and misunderstood. So another thing that Jeannie taught me was how important it is to believe in yourself. And I think that she believed in herself from the very beginning, when she was a little girl at the aquarium, imagining herself on the bottom of the ocean swimming with sharks. She always believed in herself. And she worked hard, especially when she faced challenges. She never gave up. So that was another thing I learned, how hard you have to work when you face challenges, but don't give up. So I think for my young friends watching, I hope Jeannie will inspire you to dream big and to work hard and don't give up when things get tough, and believe in yourself.
All right. Thank you so much for answering all my questions, Ms. Lang, and for writing such a lovely book about an inspiring person and someone who can inspire all of us. If you guys loved Swimming with Sharks, The Daring Discoveries of Eugenie Clark, then make sure you don't miss a reading list I put together for you guys from the library. It's got lots of books about sharks and lots of books about other great female scientists, and all those books are available for you at your local public library branch. So make sure you check those out. And now we've got some other awesome guests, some of those experts we're talking about. And we're going to have two real-life marine biologists for you to hear from. And first up is Miss Lindsay French.
All right, awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay. I am a biologist down here at Loggerhead Marine Life Center. So Loggerhead Marine Life Center is located in Juno Beach, Florida. So it's on the southeastern coast of Florida. Chelsea, we can go to the next slide. So I wanted to start off just telling you a little bit about myself. So how did I become a scientist? How did I become a woman in science? Well, really, I grew up down here in not far from where I am now in Jupiter, Florida. So I grew up near the coast, which, growing up near the coast, you just do everything with and in the ocean. We'd start our day in the ocean, we'd end our day in the ocean. So you really grow up having that connection to the marine environment and just understanding how important it is to protect and study. So it really didn't start until I got into high school. I actually started volunteering here at Loggerhead Marine Life Center. I grew up just down the street from it. And we're a sea turtle hospital. So I grew up, when I was here, I started working with sea turtles in rehabilitation. And it really just opened my eyes to the marine science field, what I could do as a scientist in marine science. I really just, I loved it. I had such a strong passion for it. So that brought me to the University of Florida. And I studied just biology, general biology in my undergrad, and then eventually went on to grad school where I studied fisheries and aquatic sciences. So sort of got more into the marine sciences as I got older. And I was very fortunate when I was in undergrad. As I was studying biology, I started volunteering at the Florida Program for Shark Research, which is where the next scientist up, Miss Shannon, Dr. Shannon, works currently. But I started volunteering at the Florida Program for Shark Research, and eventually that landed me a job. I started off as a research assistant there, and then eventually became the program manager, and worked more as a field scientist there, which I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. And then I worked there for about 6 years. And then eventually I came back home, back here to Loggerhead Marine Life Center, where now I work as the STEM education coordinator, some more of a teaching scientist, which I'm going to talk about next. So we can go to the next slide. All right, awesome. I love asking this, what is a marine biologist? Because when I ask you that, I'm sure you all have an image in your head of what a marine biologist looks like. And I'm sure it's something out of Shark Week. I'm sure it's a person in the field or some sort of scientist, maybe with a lab coat or something like that. But a marine biologist can really be anyone. It can look like anything. There are marine biologists that work in the field. There are marine biologists that work in a lab. There are even marine biologists that do more teaching than science. There are a lot of different things you can do with marine biology. And there's people who not only study animals, but there's people who study the non-living parts of the ocean as well, the currents, the tides. There are so many things you can study and do in marine biology. So when I ask what is a marine biologist, there are so many definitions. You know, it's really just a general someone who studies the ocean, but there are so many things that you can do with that. We can go on to the next slide. So this is probably more of what you're thinking when you think of what is a marine biologist. It's that field scientist. So there are a lot of marine biologists who work more in the field. This is what I did at when I worked at the Florida program for shark research. So I did about 6 years. I worked there. Mainly, I studied the small-toothed sawfish. So if you look at that picture up at the top, if you look closely, it's a bunch of scientists actually holding a small-toothed sawfish in the water. So this is what it looks like in the field. The small-toothed sawfish, if you're not familiar with it, it's actually a ray, a species of stingray, more closely related to the rays than the sharks, but still related to sharks. And this species is critically endangered. It's actually really only found here in South Florida. So we were doing some really critical research for the small-toothed sawfish here in Florida. And we'd go out into the field and we'd basically fish for them. We had permits that allowed us to do that. And we'd catch them, we'd tag them. And the funny thing with sawfish is that they are so endangered and so protected that really when we get one, we have to do so many tests on it. We have to put about 5 tags on the poor animal, but we do a lot because we're trying so hard to protect that animal. So in that picture, we're actually doing an ultrasound. So one of the biologists, I'm in the back holding sort of the tail portion, trying not to get flung off the side of the boat. But the woman next to me, the scientist next to me, is actually using goggles and an ultrasound machine to look into the belly to see if that sawfish is pregnant or not, to see, sort of study the reproduction on small-toothed sawfish. Now, we also did studies. If you look at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, I'm holding a juvenile bull shark there. We did some bull shark studies down here in South Florida. Bull sharks are one of the most common species of shark, but the funny thing is there's a lot we still don't know about them, if you can believe it. So we were studying sort of the movements of these juvenile bull sharks, how they use the freshwater ecosystems, moving into the saltwater ecosystems. So we would catch and tag them and sort of track them using little underwater receivers, so we can sort of ping them and, you know, see where their movements were as they got older. And then on the bottom right, that was some of the field work we did in the Florida Keys. I'm holding a juvenile lemon shark. Lemon sharks are a very common species down here in South Florida as well, especially down in the Florida Keys. And we did some tagging and tracking and some habitat assessments, so making sure that the habitat for these sharks is healthy. So that's a lot of what a field scientist does. So again, it's probably what you picture. It's when you think of a shark biologist, you think of Shark Week, right? You think of those people that are in the field tagging sharks, but it doesn't always look like this. So this was only about a portion of the year we would do that. And the rest of the time we were actually working in a lab. We were working up that data. Now I don't do a lot of I don't work necessarily as a field scientist, but I'm still in the field a lot. Now I work for Loggerhead Marine Life Center. I work as the STEM education coordinator. So I work more with school programs, and I focus as a teaching scientist. Now, you probably don't think of scientists as teachers, but a lot of times there's scientists that can do the science, but there's not a lot of scientists that can tell the public about their science. Now, if we're doing all this really cool research in the field, studying all these animals, but we can't tell the public about it, there's really no point in doing our science, right? We really need to communicate that to everyone so that the whole world knows how important these animals and the ocean ecosystem is. So that's what I do now. I work as a teaching scientist. I mainly work with school programs. So I basically take what we're doing in the field and I translate it to students, to teachers, to the general public, really anyone who's willing to listen. I'll sort of communicate the science to them. Now, being a teaching scientist is interesting because a lot of times your audience is people who understand science, and sometimes it's people who don't understand science or don't study science. So you really have to be able to translate a lot of complicated scientific terms to the audience. So up here in the top photo, that's actually me in the field with a leatherback sea turtle. So here at Loggerhead, our main focus is sea turtles. We are a sea turtle hospital and rescue center, and we do a leatherback research project here on our beaches. So Juno Beach is one of the most densely nested sea turtle beaches in the entire world. And the leatherback sea turtle, which is the largest sea turtle in the world, nests here on our beaches. So we do a big focus on them. These sea turtles are absolutely incredible. And it was really cool that I was able to go out with our research team and help tag these animals. So as a teaching scientist, I can go into the field, I can do the research with our research team because that helps me understand our research focuses and what we're doing. And then I can come back and translate it to the public, to the community. And then down here on the bottom left, it's actually me with a gopher tortoise burrow. So if you're up there in northern Florida, you guys have some gopher tortoises up there as well. These are really common animals. They're what we call a keystone species. They're really important for our coastal dune ecosystems. So we have them here. They're not a marine animal, but still that coastal dune ecosystem is really important. We need to protect that if we want to protect our oceans. So we study gopher tortoises as well. So it's actually me. I'm recording a video about gopher tortoises in the field for some schools, some classrooms to use. And then on the bottom right hand corner is me and my coworker Casey. We are running a seine net in a local sort of brackish water ecosystem. So what we are doing is safely catching some local fish so that we could talk to virtual campers about the local species, how to properly handle them, and different field techniques, just showing them what scientists do in the field. We can go on to the next slide. Awesome. So I just wanted to end a little bit with Loggerhead Marine Life Center, where I work now. So we are a sea turtle hospital and research facility, again, down here in Juno Beach. So if you're ever down in southeastern Florida, please come visit us. We are open to the public. We're actually a free facility too. So you can just come walk through our doors and come check out our sea turtles. Our main focus is our rehab, which is our sea turtle hospital, research, which is our sea turtle nesting research, conservation, if we're saving all these sea turtles and putting them back out into a dirty ocean, that doesn't really help our sea turtles, right? So we focus on just general ocean conservation. And then last is that education piece that teaching scientists trying to communicate to the community, to the public, why we need to protect our oceans, our sharks, our sea turtles, all those animals and ecosystems, why it's important. And that's it. That's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. That was awesome. I love learning about how you can be both a scientist and a teacher. So anybody watching who's not sure what they want to be when they grow up, turns out you can be lots of different things and help lots of different animals on our planet. So cool. With that, we're going to turn it over to Shannon, our other marine biologist, who's going to tell us more about her job working at the Florida Museum. And remember, as Shannon's talking, questions come up next, so make sure you're writing those in the chat as well. Go for it, Shannon.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here and talk with you all today. I love sharks. So I'm a biologist at the Florida Museum here in Gainesville, Florida. I work within the program for shark research, which you heard a little bit about from Lindsay just a moment ago. You can go to the next slide. So I also just want to start off with a little bit about me and how what my path looked like to become a marine biologist and a woman in science. So I'm actually Australian. So if I sound a little bit funny, your ears aren't deceiving you. I do have an accent, what's left of it anyway. So I grew up in Sydney, Australia, and you can see two photos of me in my hometown here. And so I obviously lived quite close to the beach. And so like Lindsay, I just always had a natural interest for natural history and being outdoors and wildlife and all the different kinds of wildlife that I could see around me. So I wasn't always specifically interested in marine biology as a passion. I was interested in all different kinds of organisms. So land organisms, sea organisms, anything that was not a human, basically, I was into it. So I spent a lot of my time reading books like Swimming with Sharks when I was growing up, and just becoming more knowledgeable about the world around me. And then at some point, probably also when I was a teenager, I realized that I could become a scientist and do that for my job. And so I went to university. You can switch to the next slide. So I graduated from Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. And there I did some degrees, not originally in marine biology, but just in a topic called biodiversity and conservation science. So that's just, biodiversity just means studying all the living things in the world around you. And then conservation science is trying to look at how we can conserve all of that biodiversity. So I graduated from Macquarie University originally with degrees in conservation science and biodiversity. And then I went on to do my PhD there so that I could become a scientist. And that's when I specifically became really interested in sharks. So I joined a laboratory that was studying wobbegong sharks. And you can see a picture of a wobbegong. Yes, thank you. Down there where Chelsea's pointing with the cursor right now. So they have these really cool bottom dwelling sharks. They're only found in Australian waters and kind of north up into the Indo-Pacific as far as Japan. So they're unique to that part of the world. And so I studied those guys and looked at how different populations were connected and where they moved and things like that for my PhD. So that's where I really became interested in sharks, and I've been passionate about them ever since. So after that research, I went on to study mako sharks. So that's what you can see. Mako sharks are, in my opinion, one of the coolest sharks that you can possibly ever see. So they're super fast and sleek animals, and they do these really wild jumps out of the ocean. So again, I also, with those guys, was looking at where they were moving and how populations in the southern hemisphere were connected to populations in the northern hemisphere. You can go to the next slide. And really since then, that sort of sparked, those two projects sparked my interest in sharks, and I've been studying them ever since. And one of the things that, if you learn anything from me today, is that there are lots of different types of sharks. So as you all know from reading Swimming with Sharks, if you didn't already, sharks are a kind of fish, but there's two major different kinds of fish. So you can switch to the next slide. So you have bony fish, and they're the things like tunas, Nemo, little clownfish, are bony fish, but sharks are different. They're a group that are cartilaginous fishes. And so the major difference between sharks and bony fish is what their skeleton is made up of. So sharks have a skeleton made of cartilage versus a skeleton made of bone in bony fishes. But there are a number of other different kinds of features that you can use to distinguish a shark from a bony fish. So for example, they have a different kind of scales. In sharks, scales are plate-like, they interconnect with each other versus scales in fish that are overlapping. They also have things like on the side of a shark, you can see the gill slits that are clearly visible, whereas in a bony fish, they have an operculum, which is just a flap that covers the gill structure. Bony fish's mouths are usually terminal, they're on the end of their snout, versus underneath in a shark. And they also have some different kinds of dorsal fin features that you can see here in this diagram. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. And so the other thing that is noticeably different between these two groups of fish, cartilaginous fishes or sharks versus the bony fishes, they have a big difference in the number of species. So bony fishes is more than 30,000 species. So that species is just a different kinds of fish that occur in nature. Versus with the sharks or cartilaginous fishes, it's only about 1,200 species. So there's a big difference there, but 1,200 is still a pretty big number. And most times people don't realize that there are in fact 1,200 different species of sharks and their relatives. So you can go to the next slide. So usually people are most familiar with these big three, so the white sharks and the tiger sharks and the bull sharks, and that's because sometimes these guys interact with people, and so that you'll hear about them in the media, and also because people fear them because of movies like Jaws, and sometimes they bite people and things like that. So they're the ones that we hear about most often, but you can go to the next slide. But in fact, there's a lot more diversity within sharks than just those big three. And so that's what I want you to learn a little bit about today. So you actually have three groups within sharks. You have the ratfish on the far right there. And then rays and skates are also a kind of shark. So they also have a cartilage skeleton. They're relatives of the sharks. And then you have the traditional groups of sharky looking shark things. That's what I like to call them there on the left. You can go to the next slide. But then even within sharks, you have all of this diversity. So there's tons of different kinds of sharks that you can see here on this slide. And rays, they come in lots of different shapes and sizes, down from like little tiny sharks that will fit in your hand. And in fact, most sharks are actually quite small animals. So only a few species get really large, all the way up to your huge, some of the biggest fish in the sea are the basking sharks. And then you have these things that have crazy hammers. And in the center of your screen there, you can see a cookie cutter shark with these funny little triangular teeth. You can go on to the next slide. They also come in a wide range of different ecological diversity. So that just means like, what are these sharks doing? Where do they live? How do they reproduce? And some sharks lay eggs, and some sharks will feed their young from a placenta. Some sharks hang out in the deep sea. Some like to swim in the open ocean, like your big whale sharks and your white sharks and your mako sharks. Next slide. And then the other thing that is most interesting to me is they actually do loads of really cool things that a lot of people don't realize. And these are just some examples here on this slide. So some sharks glow in the dark. On the left-hand side of the screen there, you can see what we call lantern sharks. And they have these luminous organs throughout their body that they use to bioluminesce so that they can counter shade and camouflage from their predators. In the bottom screen there, you can see a newly discovered species called the pocket shark to the left. Yeah, that guy. So he's a funny looking tiny little shark, and he has these little pockets underneath his pectoral fins, and for a long time we didn't know what they did. And recently we were able to get some new specimens of these and examine those pockets, and now we know that little photo to the right there that it's also a bioluminescent organ. And so we think it produces this bioluminescent fluid that when it's trying to defend itself, it'll like shoot out this luminous fluid that it can surround its body in this huge cloud and deter predators. You also have things like thresher sharks in the top right. They have this huge wacky long tail, and they'll use it to flap around and swim through a bait ball and then stun fish so that they can turn around and grab them for food. And then finally down the bottom, we have a swell shark, Cephalocilium, which Lucely told you about earlier. And so this is also a recently described species, and we've seen here that these guys they lay eggs, but they have this wacky egg case that's actually see-through and super cool. So that's something that we've newly discovered. So in my research, our job is to study all the different kinds of sharks that there are out there and look at shark diversity, make sure we know everything that exists and describe it. And we do that using three different techniques. The first is DNA sequencing. So this is me here in the lab. So a lot of what I do is lab-based work. So in all of the cells of your body, you have what's called DNA. And basically, it's just a blueprint for everything that your body does to keep you alive. So you have your DNA sequence, and by doing lots of lab work, we can actually look at what the sequence is of your DNA. And then we can compare that in sharks to different kinds and look at how they're different. So that's one way we study different kinds of sharks. Next slide. The other way we do that is by morphometrics. And so this is where it becomes really helpful to work in a museum and have access to all these awesome specimens. What you can see here in this slide are some of the specimens that we have in the Florida Museum collection. And we use morphometrics to compare different kinds of sharks. And that just means taking measurements from the bodies of these animals. And you see our colleague Flavia here taking some morphometric measurements from a Hypanis stingray. And then the final way that we look at shark diversity is using comparative anatomy. So the super cool thing we can do now is actually look at the insides of sharks by using CT scanning. And so then we can take measurements from internal structures and look at different kinds. So what you can see here on the right-hand side is a southern stingray, which is found commonly here in Florida. And then also on the left is a bonnethead shark. So a kind of hammerhead shark, the little tiny guys. So they're internal skeletons. And then you can go to the next slide. And so finally, what we do with all of that information is this is called a phylogenetic tree, or just a family tree, basically. So we take all of that information and look at the differences, and then we piece all the things that look like each other into groups. So you're more like your immediate family group than to any other people. And so you would form a natural family group. So we can take all of that information and build a big tree of how all the different kinds of cartilaginous fish are related to each other. And that's what you can see in this image here. And that basically gives us a roadmap for studying sharks in general. So if you want to know something about a particular animal, you can look at where it comes, where it falls in this tree, and then it immediately knows something about what you might expect about that part of the wonderful world of shark diversity. And you can go to the next slide. And so that's it from me. I'm happy to take any of your questions. Thank you very much for being here, and have a very happy holiday.
Thank you so much, Shannon. And with that, I'd like to invite our other speakers to hop back on. You guys, Lindsay and Lizelle and Heather can all turn their cameras back on. Great, it looks like everyone's here. And so now I'm gonna ask some questions from our audience to all of you. So if you haven't sent in a question yet, you still have time, because I'm gonna be reading from those. So I'm gonna start our first question. And I think this one could probably go to Lindsay, Shannon, or Heather, because now that we know that Heather swims with sharks too. So this question was emailed in. So my daughter loves the ocean, but is afraid of sharks. They're interesting on TV, but in real life, we are not so sure. She wants to know how the researchers build their confidence when they're working around unpredictable animals. And I'm gonna start with Lindsay answering this question first. So Lindsay, you wanna go ahead?
Sure. Thanks, Chelsea. That is such a great question. You know, I think a lot of times people are scared of not only sharks, but other animals because they just might not know enough about them. For me, I'm terrified of spiders. I will work with sharks all day long, but you give me a little tiny spider and I'm a huge baby. But it's honestly because I know nothing about spiders. They just look scary to me. And it's the same thing with sharks. You know, I think all of us on here that work with sharks can agree. The more you know about them, the less scary they become. They're really, I wouldn't even say that they're unpredictable. I think sharks are actually pretty predictable a lot of the times. And the more experience you have studying them and, you know, working with them in the field, the more you just become more confident working with them.
Awesome. Shannon, do you have anything to add?
No, I would agree with Lindsay. Often the fear of sharks is just the fear of the unknown, and you're told a lot of messaging that they're big and scary, but negative interactions with them are actually very rare. So despite the fact that that's what we hear about most often, most sharks, excuse me, most sharks are quite small animals. You're unlikely to ever encounter them, and if you do, they're going to be more frightened of you than you are of them. That being said, I don't encourage people until you have had a lot of experience working with them. I wouldn't encourage anybody to try to handle a shark, or if you can watch it from afar and just mind what you're doing and let it do its thing, then that's the best way to experience these animals. But learning about them in books and what you see on television and by talking to experts and visiting the museum and seeing all the different kinds of sharks, that's the best way for you to become comfortable and basically stop fearing them and be able to appreciate them for all the really cool things that they do.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what Heather already mentioned earlier. Researching and learning about sharks seem to help you, Heather. Anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. Read, and it's, you'll be amazed at all the things you'll learn, and it certainly will give you confidence. And for me, when the few times that I've seen sharks underwater, they're just like go the other way. They're not interested in interacting with me at all. I think when Jeannie said sharks are timid, she's right. Most sharks are very timid. So I think, sharks are misunderstood that way. And the more you learn about them, you'll understand.
Thanks, Heather. So this next question, I'm going to make a speed round question. I just want to go through and see if each of you can tell us what your favorite shark is. We asked the audience, so now it's your chance. Lizelle, Lizelle, will you tell us your favorite shark?
Sure, yeah. I mentioned before, but I really like whale sharks. If anyone's ever been to the aquarium in Atlanta, they actually have a number of whale sharks at the aquarium there. And I've been a few times, and I just love to just sit and watch them. They're so large and they're so interesting to look at. So yeah, I like a whale shark.
Awesome. Great reminder. Continue visiting your local aquariums and libraries and museums to keep learning about your favorite sharks. Lindsay, what's your favorite shark?
It's definitely a whale shark, actually, too.
Wow,
I think a lot of people would say whale sharks, but I just think they're fascinating because they're the biggest species and they're filter feeders. So how they eat plankton and get to be that big just boggles my mind.
Shannon, what's yours?
Oh, wobbegongs.
Wobbegongs.
Yeah, so my favorite, but the interesting thing is that this question is really hard for me because I have loads of favorites, to be honest, but wobbegongs, and they're actually related to whale sharks, even though they look completely different, eat completely different things, hang out on the bottom. So that's a fun fact for you.
Heather, what's your favorite?
Well, whale shark for sure. And that was Eugenie Clark's favorite shark, I think. She loved whale sharks, and she actually rode on the back of a whale shark and showed me pictures of herself doing that. But a close second is hammerhead. I think hammerhead sharks are so cool looking, and I just think it's so neat how they evolved the way they did.
So cool. Actually, we did get a audience question specifically about hammerhead sharks. So maybe this one could go to either Shannon or Lindsay, but can either of you speak to why the hammerhead head is shaped like that, or what purpose it might serve? Any ideas?
Yes. Are you happy for me to go ahead, Lindsay?
Yeah.
You can
Yeah, go ahead, Shannon.
pipe in if I forget it or anything. So usually when you want to know like why something looks the way it does, you want to look at what it's doing. So if you think about a hammerhead, the way it likes to feed is on stingrays and things that are buried in the sand, and so they'll cruise along the bottom, and they're looking for these prey. And so they have this, we think, have this elongated head that helps them. They're able to get panoramic vision as they're swimming in that environment. And then also they have lots of sensory organs on that elongated structure. And so basically they're using it they're superb hunters because they have all these extra sensory abilities by having that funny shaped head. So
interesting. Lindsay, did Shannon forget anything?
No, definitely not. I love sort of comparing the hammerhead cephalofoil, that head, to sort of a metal detector. So it sort of hovers over the sand. It's just a big metal detector picking up signals under the sand. It really just makes them great hunters.
Sometimes they'll use it as well to like pin animals to the ground and then feed.
Cool. So kind of like a hammer.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Great answers. And I'm going to direct this question to Lindsay. It's more so asking about, do sharks bite people, and do all sharks bite people? Can you tell us a little bit more about shark bites or shark attacks? I know you did some work with the shark attack file.
Yeah, sure. So I have to mention this. The University of Florida, actually, the Florida Museum houses the International Shark Attack File. So when I worked there, I did a lot of work with shark attacks, if you want to call it that. Really, they're not even attacks. They're barely bites most of the time. It is incredibly rare to get bit by a shark. I used to tell people, if you've been bit, you're actually pretty lucky. You should go play the lottery because it's so rare. We used to see about, on average, 80 people around the world in a year would get bit by sharks. So think of the billions of people going to the beach every single day, and only 80 of those people in a year are getting bit. So it's incredibly rare, and it's not all species. A lot of times down here in Florida, it's our black tip species. They're a really common species along the shore here. When you get a lot of sharks in their habitat, and then you get people wanting to swim in their habitat, you just see some interactions, but it is really rare. There's only, I want to say, about 20 to 25 species of shark that have ever been known to bite a human. So, you know, Shannon talked about how many species there are, over 1,200. So only having about 20 is really a really small percentage of them.
Really neat. I grew up in New Smyrna Beach, the shark bite capital of the world. So I've always been interested in shark bites. And unfortunately, I'm not one of the lucky ones to have.
Yeah, I used to love working with the surfing community in New Smyrna Beach, because they love the sharks, and they're, you know, the top community that has those bite interactions with sharks, and they still love them. They understand how important they are and how rare it is to have that sort of interaction.
Yeah. Really awesome. Shannon, anything to add about shark bites?
No, just reiterating exactly what Lindsay said. They're really rare events. Sadly, they can sometimes be also very sad events, but you don't need to fear going into the ocean. There are some things that you can do to minimize your risk. Always swim close to shore in groups of people. Don't swim at dawn and dusk when sharks are more likely to be active. And then other than that, as Lindsay said, they're super rare, and it's only a really small number of species that are involved in those interactions. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to do 2 more questions here. This next one I'm going to send over to Heather. Heather, how long did it take you to write Swimming with Sharks? If there's any future authors in the audience, anything you want to add to what it's like to be a children's book author?
Well, you know, the research takes a long time. And for this book, it didn't take me as long. There was a lot of information out there. And of course, I had Eugenie Clark as a resource. So every book is different. And I'd say that Swimming with Sharks took me about a year to do the research and then start writing. And, you know, writing picture book biographies actually takes a lot of time, because my first drafts are not very good. I have to revise and revise and revise. Sometimes it takes 20, 30 drafts before I have anything I would dare send to a publisher. But it's amazing how you can really make your writing shine if you work hard at it. And so I think revision is where the magic is. And I always tell kids that, because, you know, you have to stick with your writing. And so every book is different, but it's so much fun. And I do hope I've got some young writers out there listening that will give it a try. Thanks,
Heather. So yeah, for future writers, I guess the big advice there is keep reading and keep writing. So this last question is from a 9-year-old in the audience who loves marine biology. Can any of our scientists tell us any ideas for how she can get involved with it now, just being a kid, so she can start practicing her marine biology skills?
Yeah, sure. So I would say go to your local museums if you have one, and try to talk to scientists. And then obviously reading, things like that we already talked about. But there's also a great group, if you're not already a member, called the Gills Club. And that is specifically for young girls like you that are interested in science, and even shark science, marine biology. And they have a lot of content about those topics. And they also connect you with female scientists like myself. So I'm a member of the Gills Club. I think Lindsay may also be. Yeah. So it's a really awesome way that you can connect directly with lots of different kinds of marine biologists and learn about their different paths and all the different kinds of science that they do and what are options for you.
Awesome, thank you. Anything to add to that, Lindsay?
Sure. Yeah. Just, to add on to Shannon, as you get older, even into, middle school and high school, I definitely recommend volunteering, just getting some experience anywhere you can. I work now at a place that I volunteered at in high school, and I landed my job at the Shark Lab in shark research just because I started as a volunteer. I really didn't know anything. I just started sort of giving my free time to what I was passionate about. And that really led me through my career. So definitely, as you get older, as you keep studying, definitely try to get involved and volunteer at different places.
So cool. Really happy to hear there's lots of ways to get involved as a kid in marine biology. So thank you all for joining us today. It's 11:01, so we're going to say our goodbyes. But if you had any questions that didn't get answered, you can feel free to send them over to me. My email should be the one attached to the registration, and I can help connect you with any of our panelists we had today. So thank you all for attending. I'm going to drop, or my helper is going to drop the evaluation link to the survey in the chat. That should also pop up at your screen at the end. So if you can help us fill out that evaluation, that'd be really super helpful. It should also come to you via email. So go ahead and use that link there, and it's time to say goodbye. So bye from me.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for coming, everyone.